I woke up in an alien tent. She thanked me in the most unexpected way. Awakening in violet light pain lanced through Ethan Reed's skull as consciousness returned in waves. His eyes fluttered open to an unfamiliar ceiling, curved and translucent, casting a soft amethyst glow throughout the space. This wasn't his shuttle. The memories flooded back. The unexpected asteroid field, system failures, the desperate attempt to land on the uncharted planet below. "Hello?" he called, voice raspy from disuse. "Anyone there?" A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. Ethan froze, heart hammering against his ribs. A figure emerged from behind a gossamer curtain, humanoid but unmistakably alien. Her skin was a deep purple that seemed to shift in tone with her movements. Adorned with intricate patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light, large almond-shaped eyes studied him with intelligence and curiosity, their irises swirling with colors Ethan had never seen before. "Where am I?" he asked, attempting to sit up. Pain shot through his side, forcing him back down. The alien approached cautiously, her movements fluid and graceful. She wore simple garments that resembled woven silk, flowing around her slender frame. She gestured to his injuries with obvious concern. "I'm hurt, aren't I?" Ethan touched his side, feeling bandages made from an unfamiliar, cool material. "Did you help me?" She nodded, a surprisingly human gesture that eased some of Ethan's tension. She reached for something beside his bed, a small device that resembled a river-smooth stone. When she touched it, it illuminated, projecting rudimentary symbols into the air between them. "Translation?" Ethan guessed, watching the symbols shift. "Not quite there yet, huh?" The alien, female he presumed, tilted her head, studying him. Then unexpectedly, she smiled. The expression transformed her face, making her seem suddenly less foreign. She touched her chest. "Thalia," she said, her voice melodic with unusual harmonics. "Thalia," Ethan repeated, testing the name. "I'm Ethan." He mirrored her gesture. Touching his own chest. "Ethan," she echoed, the syllables lilting in her mouth. She turned away briefly, retrieving a container filled with clear liquid that shimmered with prismatic colors. Offering it to him, she pantomimed drinking. Ethan hesitated only briefly before accepting. His training had included first contact protocols, but nothing had prepared him for being rescued by an alien after a crash landing. The liquid was cool and sweet, instantly soothing his parched throat. "Thank you," he said, the simple words inadequate for the life-saving help she'd provided. Outside the dome-like structure, twin suns were setting, casting long shadows through the translucent walls. The landscape beyond appeared arid and mountainous, dotted with unusual vegetation that glowed softly as darkness fell. "Where are we? What planet is this?" Ethan asked, knowing she couldn't understand the specific questions. He pointed outside questioningly. "Lyria," Thalia responded, making a sweeping gesture with her arms that seemed to encompass everything. That night, as strange stars appeared in an unfamiliar sky, Ethan watched as Thalia worked with various plants and minerals, creating medicines and food. She moved with purpose and care, occasionally glancing his way to ensure he was comfortable. In the quiet moments between pain and confusion, Ethan found himself studying her. Despite her alien appearance, there was something profoundly familiar in her expressions: compassion, curiosity, intelligence. When she approached with a bowl of something that smelled surprisingly appetizing, their fingers brushed momentarily. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through Ethan's body. Not alien at all, but the simple human response to connection in a moment of vulnerability. As Thalia settled beside him, pointing to the stars and attempting to share their names in her language, Ethan realized that despite being light years from Earth, he'd found something unexpectedly comforting in this strange violet world. A voices without words days on Lyria lasted longer than Earth's, giving Ethan ample time to observe his surroundings as his strength returned. The dome where Thalia had brought him was one of many scattered along the edge of a vast canyon, each structure glowing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate with one another through pulses of light. Ethan's scientific mind never stopped analyzing. He'd started keeping a journal using the emergency tablet that had survived the crash, documenting everything from the planet's atmosphere to Thalia's methods of healing. The translator device was gradually improving as it gathered more linguistic data, though conversation remained largely gestural. "This plant," Thalia indicated a spiral-shaped succulent whose leaves unfurled in the morning light, She pressed a finger to its center, causing it to release a fine mist that smelled of citrus and spice. For healing, Ethan guessed, pointing to his now healing side. Thalia nodded, then touched her throat and made a soothing gesture. Televish, she named it. Ethan had become fascinated by the way her skin's luminescence shifted with her emotions, brightening when she was excited, dimming to a deeper purple when contemplative. Today, as they ventured outside for the first time since his crash, her patterns danced with what he interpreted as nervous excitement. Your world is beautiful, Ethan said, knowing she couldn't fully understand but feeling the need to express his wonder. The landscape was both harsh and mesmerizing. Rock formations spiraled toward the sky in impossible configurations, while patches of crystalline vegetation caught the light of the twin suns. In the distance, other members of Thalia's species moved through the landscape, some pausing to observe the strange visitor. Thalia guided him to a flat stone overlooking the canyon and gestured for him to sit. From a pouch at her side, she withdrew something that made Ethan's breath catch. A piece of his shuttle, a fragment of the navigation panel. She placed it in his palm, her expression solemn. You found this? There's more? Ethan asked, hope rising. If more of the shuttle had survived, perhaps the communication array. Thalia seemed to understand his excitement. She nodded, pointing toward a distant ridge where glints of metal caught the sunlight. She pantomimed the crash, then made walking motions with her fingers. A journey of several days, he guessed. As the suns began to set, they returned to the dome. Thalia introduced Ethan to two other members of her species, an elder whose skin had faded to a pale lavender, and a younger male whose patterns pulsed with curious intensity as he studied the human. The elder approached Ethan without fear, placing weathered hands on either side of his face. For a moment, Ethan felt a strange tingling sensation, almost like static electricity, before the elder stepped back with a knowing nod to Thalia. Genla, the elder pronounced, pointing to Ethan. What does that mean? Ethan asked, looking between them. Thalia touched her chest, then reached out to touch his. Same, the translator finally offered, its first successful word. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan sat outside watching the 3 moons of Lyria cast their glow across the landscape. Thalia joined him silently, draping a woven blanket around his shoulders against the desert chill. Why did you save me? Ethan asked, not expecting an answer. Thalia gazed upward, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to mirror the constellations above. She took his hand in hers, warm, with a texture like velvet, and pressed it gently over her heart, then over his. The gesture transcended language. Something powerful and unspoken passed between them, a recognition that despite their differences, something fundamental connected them. As the moons climbed higher, they remained side by side, 2 beings from distant worlds finding comfort in shared silence beneath the same stars. The crystal caverns stay close, Thalia cautioned through the now-functioning translator. After 3 weeks on Lyria, the device had accumulated enough linguistic patterns to form basic sentences, though nuance was often lost. Ethan followed her through a narrow crevice in the canyon wall, ducking beneath low-hanging crystal formations that chimed softly when brushed. His scientific curiosity was heightened. Thalia had been preparing for this excursion for days, gathering specific herbs and creating ceremonial markings on her skin with a pace that enhanced her natural bioluminescence. These caverns, the translator struggled, hold memories of ancestors. Sacred place. The passage widened suddenly into a vast underground chamber that stole Ethan's breath. Massive crystal columns stretched from floor to ceiling, each pulsing with internal light that shifted through spectrums both familiar and alien. The ground beneath them was a mosaic of smaller crystals, creating patterns that seemed to move as they walked. Other Lyrians were already gathered, forming a circle around a central pool of silvery liquid. They acknowledged Thalia with respectful nods, their curious glances at Ethan more welcoming than when he'd first arrived. What happens here? Ethan whispered, sensing the reverence of the space. Communion, Thalia explained, leading him toward the circle. We share. Not just words, feelings, memories, truth. The elder from the village approached, adorned with crystals that mirrored those in the cavern. He beckoned to Ethan, an invitation that felt significant. They want you to participate, Thalia explained, her patterns brightening with surprise. This is unusual. Outsiders rarely invited. Ethan hesitated. What does it involve? Touch the water. Open mind. Thalia's expression grew serious. Only share what you wish. First time is intense. Trust had grown between them during Ethan's recovery. He'd witnessed Thalia's compassion not just toward him, but toward all living things on Lyria. If she believed this was safe, he would trust her judgment. The circle parted to admit them. Ethan knelt beside Thalia at the pool's edge, watching as others dipped their fingers into the mercury-like liquid, their bioluminescent patterns synchronizing as they did. Together, Thalia said softly, taking his hand. Her touch sent a now familiar warmth through him, a connection he'd been reluctant to name but couldn't deny. They touched the surface simultaneously. The liquid rippled outward, and instantaneously Ethan's consciousness expanded. He was no longer simply himself. Impressions, emotions, and memories not his own flowed through his mind like a gentle current. He saw Earth through Thalia's perception, a beautiful blue mystery that had sent strange visitors in metal ships twice before in her lifetime. He felt her fear when she'd discovered his crashed shuttle, her determination as she'd dragged his unconscious form from the wreckage before the toxic fuel could ignite. More profoundly, he experienced her growing fascination with him, the alien whose expressions mirrored her own despite their different worlds. He felt her wonder at the connection forming between them, a bond that transcended the physical differences of their species. And Thalia, in turn, was experiencing his memories, the wonder of his first spacewalk, the loss of his parents that had pushed him toward the stars, his fear upon waking in a strange place, and his growing admiration for her intelligence and grace. When they withdrew their hands, the connection lingered. Around them, the other Lyrians were watching with expressions of wonder. The elder approached, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. Two worlds, one spirit, the translator interpreted, its mechanical voice incongruous in the sacred space. That night, as they walked back to the village under the triple moons, a new understanding flowed between them. Words seemed superfluous after what they'd shared. When they reached Thalia's dome, she hesitated at the entrance, her luminescence pulsing in a pattern Ethan now recognized as nervous anticipation. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up to trace the contours of his face with gentle fingers, learning him through touch as she had through the communion. Ethan caught her hand, pressing his lips to her palm in a gesture that needed no translation. "I never expected to find you," he whispered. "Across all these stars." The translator remained silent, but as Thalia drew him into the dome, the soft violet glow of her skin speaking volumes more than words ever could, Ethan knew with certainty that some languages are universal. Storm of Two Worlds. The first warning came at dawn, a sudden shift in the air pressure that made Ethan's ears pop. He'd been helping Thalia harvest medicinal plants along the canyon rim when the horizon darkened ominously. What had been clear skies moments before was now a churning wall of amber clouds advancing with unnatural speed. "Ethan!" Thalia's voice was urgent through the translator. "Storm comes, not ordinary. Dangerous." In the 3 lunar cycles since his arrival on Lyria, Ethan had experienced the planet's typical weather patterns, brief rain showers that left the crystalline vegetation gleaming, warm winds that carried the scent of distant flowering fields. But the fear in Thalia's expression told him this was something else entirely. "What kind of storm?" he asked, already gathering their harvesting tools. "Electric storm. Comes once each great cycle. Disrupts life patterns." She pointed to her bioluminescent markings. "For my people, painful. Sometimes fatal." They rushed back toward the village where frantic activity was already underway. The Lyrians were reinforcing their dome-shaped dwellings with a metallic mesh that Ethan hadn't seen before. The elder was directing younger members to gather the very young and the elderly into a central structure with thicker walls. "How can I help?" Ethan asked, the scientist in him already analyzing the situation. If this was an electromagnetic storm, perhaps his knowledge could be useful. Thalia led him to the village's central gathering space where several Lyrians were attempting to activate a large device partially buried in the ground. Its design was unlike the organic technology he'd seen them use. This appeared older, with components that reminded him vaguely of Earth technology. "Ancestor shield," Thalia explained. "Protects from storm energy, but not working many cycles." Ethan knelt beside the device, examining its components. May I? He asked. When Thalia nodded, he began carefully disassembling the outer panel. The storm clouds were now directly overhead, casting an eerie bronze light across the landscape. Static electricity made the air itself feel alive. Ethan could see the discomfort on Thalia's face as her bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically. Inside the device, Ethan found what looked remarkably like a power core, similar to those used in Earth's older space stations. The connections were corroded and several crystal components had fractured over time. I think I can fix this, he said, but I need materials from my shuttle. Thalia's expression was torn between hope and concern. No time to reach crash site. What about the piece you showed me? Is there more salvage nearby? A rapid conversation in the Lyrian language followed. One of the younger males hurried away, returning moments later with a container of shuttle fragments Thalia had collected. Ethan sorted through them quickly, finding components he could repurpose. As the first massive lightning strikes hit the canyon walls, sending tremors through the ground, Ethan worked feverishly. Thalia remained by his side despite her obvious pain, translating his technical needs to the others who brought tools and materials. Almost there, Ethan muttered, reconfiguring the power distribution system. The principle is simple. It should create an electromagnetic field that diverts the storm's energy. A particularly violent crack of lightning struck nearby, and several Lyrians cried out as their bioluminescent patterns flared painfully. Thalia stumbled and Ethan caught her, alarmed by the dulling of her usually vibrant purple skin. Just hold on, he urged, supporting her with one arm while making final adjustments with his free hand. Ready to test. The elder approached, placing a weathered hand over the device and looking at Ethan with what could only be described as trust. With a nod, Ethan activated the reconfigured shield. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum that gradually built to a resonant tone, the device came to life. A shimmering dome of energy expanded outward, encompassing the village. Where lightning struck the invisible barrier, it dispersed harmlessly in fractal patterns. Inside the protected area, the Lyrian's pain visibly eased. Thalia's patterns stabilized, her color deepening once more to rich purple. Around them, expressions of relief and wonder spread as the protection held against the storm's fury. You saved us, Thalia said simply, her hand finding his. The storm raged through the night, its fury visible but no longer threatening through the protective barrier. Ethan and Thalia sat together on the highest point of the village, watching the spectacular display of lightning across the canyon. Your knowledge, Thalia said softly, and our technology. Together. Stronger. Ethan looked at her profile illuminated by the storm flashes, struck again by how the universe could create such different beings with such similar hearts. In that moment, as her fingers intertwined with his, the distance between their worlds seemed inconsequential compared to what they'd built between them. Together, he agreed, the word carrying far more meaning than its simple sound. As dawn broke and the storm finally dissipated, the villagers emerged to assess the damage beyond their protected enclave. The elder approached Ethan and Thalia, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. 2 worlds, 1 solution, the translator interpreted. You belong with us now, Ethan of Earth. That day, as they helped restore the areas damaged by the storm, Ethan caught himself thinking of the village as home, a realization both terrifying and exhilarating as he considered what it might mean for his future. Beyond the horizon, the signal came precisely 97 days after Ethan's crash landing. He was working with Thalia in what had become their shared dwelling, documenting the medicinal properties of Lyrian flora, when his emergency beacon, salvaged from the shuttle wreckage, emitted a series of tones he'd begun to think he would never hear. What is it? Thalia asked, noticing his sudden stillness. A response, Ethan said, voice barely above a whisper. From Earth. They've found me. The beacon's small display confirmed what the tones had announced. A rescue vessel had picked up his distress signal and calculated an arrival time of 14 Earth days. After more than 3 months believing himself potentially stranded forever, rescue was imminent. The news spread quickly through the village. The Lyrians' reactions were mixed. Joy for Ethan's sake mingled with apprehension about more humans arriving. Only Thalia's reaction remained unreadable. Her bioluminescence dimmed to its faintest glow as she silently left the dwelling. Ethan found her at their spot overlooking the canyon, where they had spent countless evenings watching Lyria's triple moons rise. She didn't turn as he approached, but her patterns fluttered in acknowledgement of his presence. "You will go," she said, not a question but a statement of accepted fact. Ethan sat beside her, the familiar warmth of her presence now tinged with an ache he couldn't ignore. "I don't know," he admitted. "Your world needs you. Your people search for you." "And what about this world?" Ethan asked, his hand finding hers in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "What about you?" The communion in the crystal caverns had created a bond between them that transcended physical differences or language barriers. They had never put a name to it, but it had grown with each passing day. In shared work, in quiet moments, in the night when boundaries between their worlds seemed to dissolve completely. "I belong here," Thalia said simply. "You belong to stars." The days that followed were filled with preparations. Ethan gathered his research, the scientific discoveries that would revolutionize understanding of extraterrestrial life. The village elders convened meetings to decide how to approach this official first contact, whether to remain hidden or to reveal themselves. Through it all, Thalia worked alongside Ethan, helping him document everything, her scientific mind matching his own. But a new distance had grown between them, the inevitable separation hovering like a shadow over each moment. 3 days before the rescue ship's arrival, the elder summoned them both to the crystal caverns. The sacred space was empty save for the three of them, the glowing crystals casting rainbow patterns across their skin. "You carry 2 worlds now," the elder told Ethan through the translator. "Choice before you is not simple return." "I know," Ethan said. "Our people wish friendship with Earth," the elder continued. "But careful steps. Need bridge between worlds." The elder produced a crystal unlike any Ethan had seen before, perfectly clear yet somehow containing swirling galaxies within its depths. He placed it in Ethan's palm, then closed Thalia's hand over it, joining them. "Communion crystal," Thalia explained, her patterns brightening with emotion. "Holds memories, connections, allows distance sharing." A way to stay connected, Ethan realized, the implications washing over him. That night, alone in their dwelling, words finally failed in the face of imminent separation. Their communication became touch, breath, the synchronization of heartbeats beneath different skin. Thalia's luminescence reached its brightest intensity, bathing them in violet light that ebbed and flowed with their movements. In the quiet aftermath, Ethan memorized every detail of her. The constellation-like patterns across her shoulders, the way her eyes held colors that had no names in human language, the gentle strength of her hands. "I can't leave you," he whispered against her temple. "Then don't," she answered simply. On the day the rescue ship entered Lyria's atmosphere, Ethan stood with the entire village at the canyon's edge. The ship was smaller than expected, a reconnaissance vessel rather than a full rescue operation. It landed precisely where Ethan had directed through his beacon, on a flat plain away from the village. Thalia squeezed his hand once before releasing it. "Your decision," she said, stepping back to join the elders. 2 crew members emerged from the ship in environmental suits, approaching cautiously. Ethan walked forward alone, his heart thundering in his chest. "Dr. Reed?" called the lead officer. "Thank God. We'd almost given up hope." "I'm all right," Ethan replied, voice strange in his own ears after months of speaking softly for the translator's benefit. "Are you alone?" The scanners showed signs of... "I'm not alone," Ethan interrupted. He turned back toward the canyon edge where Thalia and the elders now stood visible. "And I'd like to make an introduction." The crew members froze as they registered the presence of the Lyrians. One reached for a communication device, presumably to contact their ship. "Wait," Ethan said firmly. "Before you report this, there's something I need to tell you." He took a deep breath, the communion crystal warm against his chest beneath his clothing. "I've been appointed as the first human ambassador to Lyria, and I won't be returning with you." The sunset that evening painted Lyria's sky in colors that still took Ethan's breath away after all these months. He stood with Thalia at the edge of the canyon, watching the rescue ship depart with his research data and official first contact protocols. But without him. "Are you certain?" Thalia asked, her patterns reflecting the sunset hues. Your world will still be there, Ethan finished. And now they know about yours. This is where I'm needed. He turned to face her fully. This is where I want to be. The communion crystal glowed between them as Thalia placed her hand over his heart. No translation was needed for what passed between them. A promise, a future, a bridge between worlds that neither had imagined possible when a crashed shuttle had brought a lone human to a purple-skinned healer. As Lyria's 3 moons rose over the horizon, casting their silver light across the alien landscape that had become home, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that sometimes the most profound discoveries weren't made in the stars themselves, but in the connections formed beneath them.